the perfect phenocopy of human aging. So Werner syndrome is one of them that actually come closest. I think that it has a very strong overlap with human aging, but there are many other diseases where you see an overlap with human aging.
As I discussed in the introduction, a part of your work is on DNA damage. So can you explain to our listener what is DNA damage and what causes it?
Yes, absolutely. So we are in many ways, if you think of aging as your car growing old, it rusts and it gets damaged. We also accumulate damage over time, but it's of course much more complex. And so our DNA is our blueprint for the cell. It's like our manual for the car. And if the manual gets damaged, you can't repair the car, you can't fix the car. So there's no going back. So over time, we damage our DNA. We have a lot of enzymes. We have more than 400 enzymes that try to fix our DNA, little mechanics that are running around in our cells to try to remove the damage. And if we lose our ability to repair the damage, or if we get exposed to things that induce more damage, then we age more rapidly. And so part of my lab is looking at diseases where children basically age faster than they should. And these are most often caused by problems with repairing the DNA. So these children have mutations in single genes, and those genes are typically genes that are involved in repairing DNA.
Yeah. And just a background on myself, I used to work on the Werner syndrome protein, WRN, which is also part of, it's a bit later because I assume that you're talking about progeria. I spent, I would say, maybe a decade on the premature aging syndrome that related to DNA damage. So I completely understand your viewpoint. And can you a bit elaborate about those diseases, that DNA damage problem that basically cause a premature aging?
So, I mean, there's actually quite a large amount of different diseases where you can consider that they have premature aging. So we published a paper, I think it came out a month or two ago, where we tried to define what a premature aging disease actually is, because that in itself is also kind of challenging, because all these diseases have sort of certain overlaps with normal human aging.
Yeah.
But many of them, or all of them actually, they don't show sort of the perfect phenocopy of human aging. So Werner syndrome is one of them that actually come closest. I think that it has a very strong overlap with human aging, but there are many other diseases where you see an overlap with human aging. I've worked with Cockayne syndrome. I still work with Cockayne syndrome. And then we have a couple of new diseases that we're working on that I cannot disclose, but we have characterized in collaboration with some physicians here at the University of Copenhagen, where we at the main hospital here in Copenhagen, and we've generated knockout mice and have characterized those. But the take-home message, I think, from many of these diseases is that you really need to be able to repair your DNA. And if you do not repair your DNA, you accumulate damage, and that damage can lead to cancer, but it can also lead to degeneration, so cell death and degenerative diseases. So it's very important to somehow keep your DNA healthy as we age.
Absolutely. And how our body repair those DNA damage, let's say in a normal body that doesn't have age-related diseases? How do we do that?
So there's a number of different pathways that repair the DNA. It depends on the type of DNA. So our repair capacities have been shaped by the type of damage that our cells are exposed to. So some deal with small modifications to the DNA. This is repair, for example, by base excision repair, which replaces a single tiny bit, like a screw in a way, or like a tiny button in the car, and puts in the correct button so that the car will work again. Then there are things that repair larger structural differences. So there's something called nucleotide excision repair, which will repair lesions to a single strand, but larger lesions, and it will take out a chunk of the DNA and then put in a replacement part. And then there are things that repair even larger lesions or more serious lesions where you have effects on both DNA strands. So normally we have two strands. One is a template, and one can be a template for repair. So if you have damage to one strand, you can take out that strand and put in a new strand and then repair the DNA that way. But if you get damage to both strands, that's an issue. And there are repair mechanisms that try to deal with that. So there's something called double-stranded break repair, which will try to fuse strands together, or do something called homologous recombination. It gets very technical. And then there are other types of DNA repair pathways that show various types of overlap. But I think the take-home message is that there is that for every lesion, there has been an evolution to adapt to that lesion and find a way to solve that for organisms. So many of these repair pathways are also found in other organisms, even in yeast cells or some organisms that are very far removed from us. And it's actually, I think, interesting in considering sort of what are the damages that occur that accumulate with age, and how do they contribute. I think that's actually still a little bit debatable. We know that mutations accumulate with age in our DNA, but whether or not those mutations are driving a phenotype is not clear. They're probably driving cancer, but whether or not they're driving degeneration, such as neurodegeneration or cardiovascular disease, cardiomyopathies, for example, I think is not clear here. It may be that there are other mechanisms in play. For example, that we have damage that we cannot repair. So this is, for example, this is work from the late Judith Campisi that showed that persistent DNA damage. So you can accumulate a few bits of few DNA damage sites around your genome. So our genome is very large, 6 billion base pairs, but only 3 lesions in somewhere in that giant piece of these giant pieces of DNA is enough to drive a cell into senescence. So that what those lesions actually are is not clear, but it seems that the DNA damage response could be involved in the aging process by activating senescence or cellular or cell death, so apoptosis, driving cells to die, and maybe driving stem cells to die. So I'm very DNA centric in my view of aging, but there are many probably other mechanisms that are causing us to age, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But I agree with you that the DNA damage is a very important path, and there are so many enzymes that can fix it, and so many different pathways. I think that the take-home message for our listeners is that DNA damage is important. It is accumulated with the aging process. We know that. And it can cause a lot of different effects. So my follow-up question for you is, what question are you asking right now to try to understand better what is the relationship between DNA damage and aging?
Yeah, so as I alluded to before, that it appears that over time we accumulate DNA damage and perhaps some types of DNA damage that we cannot repair. So we have a huge machinery that can repair all types of damage. And if you irradiate a cell with ionizing radiation, for example, you're going to create a large number of and a large variety in the type of damage that the cell can repair. And so 99% of that damage will be repaired. But you can measure that by looking at sort of alarm bells that go off around the genome. But in some of those areas, the alarm bells are not shut down, which means that the DNA damage persists. And what that damage is not understood at all, I think. And I think that maybe these represent sites that are biochemically where we don't have the right repair tools basically to repair those sites. So some of the stuff that we're doing in the lab is that we're trying to develop drugs that maybe does something to the repair site, and we're trying to develop enzymes, for example, that can so basically not human enzymes. We're engineering new repair enzymes that can go in and then repair the sites to remove this type of damage. So I think this is an exciting prospect. So this is some of the stuff we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely out of the box thinking. So I like it a lot.